The R&D topic, Famine in a Fertile Land, the curious case of Indian R&D. रास्ते और तुम्हारे बीच की जो दूरी है वो मिटा के तो देखो, just as how Madam had mentioned. So, वो मिटाने की रास्ते में है हम. We are ready to bridge the gap. And to moderate this panel discussion, can we have the pleasure of having on stage Mr. Sam Santhosh, entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience in the software industry, with 15 years of exposure in the biotechnology industry, the CEO of SciGenom Labs Private Limited. He has previously founded and led CalSoft MedGenome with operations in India and US, a senior charter member of TiEcon Kerala, now of course a mentor to several companies in the US and India. Good afternoon to you, sir. Welcome. And now for our panelists, may we have on stage Mr. Vishal Menon, Chief Development Officer at Synthite Industries Private Limited, where he is consistently engaged in research and development efforts that link to building new businesses, new brands. For over 25 years, he has developed functional expertise in entrepreneurship strategy, innovation and organizational development across industries, across various spectrums. Hearty welcome to you, Mr. Vishal. And joining us is Mr. Ajit Mathai, founding partner of mByom Consulting and Management Services, a renowned name in the world of industrial engineering, an NIT Trichy and XLRI Jamshedpur graduate with transformative experiences in leading the study of Indian railways and fostering sustainable farming communities. He envisions mByom as a for-profit entity committed to socio-economic sustainable transformation through local self-governance and collaboration. Looking forward to the session, sir. And also joining us as our panelist is Mr. Thoufeeq Ahmed Moidu. Gracious welcome to you, the director of Peekay Steel Castings Private Limited, a leading oil and energy company headquartered in Kozhikode. He has advanced the company into being a key player in heavy and value-added engineering. Good afternoon and welcome to you. And now over to our moderator to steer forth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session. So you already heard a brief introductions about all of us. So I wouldn't spend any more time on talking about us. But just to lay the foundation of what we are going to cover here, we already heard some very exciting presentations from Kripa. And the opportunities that India can leverage if R&D is done the right way. I think Ola Electric shows a very good example. But at the same time, in a larger context, India faces so many challenges. As Padma said earlier in his brief talk, that we are not spending enough money, first of all. We are far behind other large economies in the world in the percentage of R&D money that is being spent. But at the same time, if you look at it, we are very capable in innovating even with small amounts of money. So if you can look at, there are various examples India can show where even though we have a lack of money, our brain power has been often good enough to come up with very innovative solutions. And so maybe the famine can be changed into a more prosperity, but that I hope our panelists, we have a fantastic panel here from different industries. So they should be able to give us some insight and suggestions on what India in a larger context and Kerala, which is of more primary importance to us, what can we do? And what are the opportunities maybe that will be in front of us for leveraging R&D? So we have about 40 minutes, so I will keep our discussions to about 30 minutes, and I will leave the last 10 minutes for handling questions from all of you. And the first 30 minutes, we will do it in 2 rounds. We will do a first round of 5 minutes each, and then we will do a second round of 5 minutes each. So we should get 30 minutes that way. So the first 5 minutes, which each one of them can talk about, which I would like to hear from all of you gentlemen, is what is the real reason for the famine? I mean, I'm assuming that nobody will argue that we have a famine, but why? We have great manpower. I agree that the money spent has been small, but still, we shouldn't be at this stage. There are even much smaller countries than us with smaller budgets which are doing better than us. So what are the challenges that we are facing? And especially in your industry, right? If you can give a little more insight from the areas that you are working in, what is happening. And so in the second round, we will handle more about what are the future opportunities that we get. So maybe I'll start with Ajit. Ajit is sitting in the center, so he can go first. Ajit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm going to be speaking about commons, and I'll explain what I will talk about commons perhaps in the second round. And I'm happy to say that Kerala is in a position where actually there isn't a famine as far as the commons are concerned. In fact, I think Kerala is well ahead of the rest of India and perhaps the rest of the world. But I'll come to that in the second.
Maybe you can just explain what you mean by commons?
Okay, very simply, commons is something that belongs to everyone and therefore doesn't belong to anyone. And I think this is something that Kerala has done exceedingly well in, and I will talk about it in the second round. But before I do that, being a consultant and we end up doing a lot of work, we had developed a framework, and in each of these sectors that we are talking about, agriculture, I've been involved in actually working out the strategy plan for MSSRF with the late Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, which is the 5-year program right now. In education, the institution of eminence for Reliance University, a successful bid we got for them. An unsuccessful bid was for my alma mater, NIT Trichy. So I understand academics from that, from a R&D and research point of view. The third is in the healthcare. I was working with All India Institute of Medical Sciences and then St. John's research institutions in that area. And not covered in the group is actually infrastructure, where railways was talked about. But I've also built out for World Bank the Center of Excellence framework for roads, water, which now by and large has become the model. Now, what is this model? When you synthesize it, research and ROI on research has 4 components. The first component is what I call innovation, the outside-in view. What China did very well to go outside and bring in ideas and thoughts, which Japan did at the time of after the World War, which India has not done enough of. The outside-in perspective, bringing in what is required to a strategic plan for the nation or the state, is what we have not done enough of. The second is R&D, which we associate with all your centers of excellence, is with the institute. You have a defined problem, there is research happening. This is what we call R&D, and we've done fairly well in this area. The third area is competence, and how do you build competence? How do you build standards? How do you disseminate this information? Others have talked about it. I'm also talking about it. That's been an area of weakness. And the fourth, which no one has addressed right now, is once you have internalized, once you've implemented it, how do you address problems, problem solving in it? And how does, if a problem is not solved, how does it go back into R&D? So very much like my previous speaker, this is an iterative 4 model: innovation, R&D, the classic, the standards and the competence, and the problem solving. Unless we get all these 4 quadrants working together, you do not get ROI on research. I will stop with that and pass it back to you.
Thanks, Ajit. Maybe Vishal, you can go.
Sure. So I've spent about 20 years in the trench lines of product development and R&D being one of the core areas, and some of the insights from there is you can abstract this into 3 levels. One is what ubiquitously everybody talks about in forums, which is at the India level, right? We're talking about overall spends as a function of GDP. We're talking about quality of education. At the policy level, we're talking about protection of intellectual property, things like that. Then you have at the infrastructure stroke institutional level famines. Now, and that is again clearly self-evident in that many large companies have different kinds of famines when compared to companies such as MSMEs, where, for example, you have issues with trust, correct? Basic issues with trust. You have basic issues with what we call power distance culture. You have issues with psychological safety. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the third element is, at the third eye, as I call it, is the individual level. So the question really is, what can we do with the hand that we've been dealt, right? So inherent in the argument that there is a famine in a fertile land basically means that there is availability of talent, and that seems to be self-evident. But at the same time, our ability to leverage it is really the gap. So the question is, what are we not doing enough of, or what are we doing wrong when it comes to being able to attract this talent, institutionalize this talent, leverage this talent, nurture this talent, grow this talent, right? Which is a very, very different kind of problem. And that's where, traditional approaches clearly have failed. So, for example, I look at, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs and small entrepreneurs or people that run startups, I think one of the most important competencies of a CEO is that he has to be a top-notch recruiter. He needs to recruit every minute of his working day. I mean, every person he meets should be a potential recruitee, right? And that's the kind of DNA that you see in several small startups that are successful, right? So it's about opportunity mining. So the question is about having the ability to assess talent on the fly, and your ability to kind of capitulate that very quickly into, offer or bringing that person on board if you really think that's the right person. So the question is, what is that mechanism that we have to do it? And invariably, if you take a poll across most small, medium companies, is that they would depend on a HR person to do that, right? And the tools that they would use would typically be a resume and the traditional approach. Whereas there are modern tools that we can think about which can improve the predictive validity of a successful hire, especially when you're looking at people with an innovative mindset. So as I think it was Tom Allen who spoke about the T profile from IDEO, right? The famous T profile model, where you really want people with functional expertise that is on the horizontal and functional depth, which is the eye of the T, if you will, right? The vertical line of the T being deep and enough of horizontal spread so that people can actually, so basically you're looking for a polymath. Now polymathy was a very important thing back in the Renaissance, right? You had people like Leonardo da Vinci, who was a mathematician, a painter, a philosopher. So when you talk about people who are going to disrupt with technology, you're really talking about somebody who has got functional expertise as well as curiosity that extends beyond what their own deep functional expertise. So these are not easy people to find, and they're even harder people to keep. So the question is, can you create an environment where a CEO can step aside and say, you know what, here is somebody who can actually do this job better than me, and be able to allow that person to do that job. That is a huge, opportunity as well as a challenge. Right, so I'll stop at that at this round. I have a tendency to love the sound of my own voice sometimes, so I'll let Thoufeeq or
before that, maybe let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Because I've been a CEO like all my life because I could never get a job, so I'd always be starting my own company, right? So especially in the early days when I'm younger and I don't have a track record, I'm a CEO, quote unquote. But how do I attract the talent? You're saying, oh, choose the right talent. That's okay. Nobody will argue there. But will the right talent come and join a small startup by this guy or 2-3 guys? So how?
So you're right. I mean, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So but the point is that your ability to be an evangelist for your own beliefs and inspire people to be a part of that is a core talent that any person who sets up a company has to have, and that's non-negotiable. And if you don't have that, then you should look at somebody else doing that for you.
Yeah, maybe
right?
Consultants or
right.
Help.
Whether it's a consultant, whether you probably get a partner on board who has that ability that you don't necessarily have. And that's where I often see companies fail, because you can be an expert in your functional area. You can be the god of synthetic biology, but then you don't really have the people skills, or you don't really have the ability to go out and form those kind of relationships that is required for exactly this purpose, attract talent, right?
Yep.
You need to get a partner who can do that for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Vishal. Thoufeeq, you're the younger person, so I kept you for the last.
So I'm not going to pretend to talk on a countrywide level because I don't think my years would allow me to do so. So I'm going to talk on a company perspective on what we lead. So we've been manufacturing in Kerala for around about 30 years, and we have various manufacturing stations around the country. But primarily when you look at it in our sort of space, we see that our benchmark has always been China in terms of this sort of space. India is always seen as an advantage on a labor sort of arbitrage model and not as an innovation and technology sort of innovator sort of model. So as a company, where we primarily focus on is on three verticals in terms of R&D, metallurgical enhancements, product design and productivity, whereby design-based thinking, product life cycle or component life cycle is kind of assessed. And the third being sustainability. So where under that even 3D printing comes in, and carbon capture, and being more committed to the environment and society at large. But when you talk about it on a Kerala perspective, even when we looked at putting a 3D printing or additive manufacturing facility in Kerala, we thought twice about it because one, the talent pool was not available, and hence we went to Bangalore, where the talent pool for that sort of space was a lot more bigger. So in terms of an ideal location, Kerala and where the factory was would be the best place for that to be situated. But unfortunately, circumstances didn't allow us to do so. So in the long term, we still have a lot of work to do with educational institutions to garner that talent pool, to tap into those resources and play a more vital role going forward. And that's some of the areas that we are primarily focusing on, and that's what I'd like to say.
Do you, as a company, have a specific budget for R&D?
We, over the last few years, we've had, all our plants have around about an R&D team, and we've budgeted around about 6 to 8% of the total revenue for R&D for the coming years. So in terms of scale, to grow the company, in terms of innovation, in terms of technology drive, that's where we are driving towards.
Thanks, Thoufeeq. So in the second round, maybe Vishal, I'll start with you. So just give you a little break, Ajit. Vishal, so what do you think we should do? So what as a state, as entrepreneurs, youngsters sitting here, what are the opportunities that you see in Kerala? How do we get out of this famine rut?
So I want to just lean on Thoufeeq's point about the fact that you did not identify a talent pool here. It's exactly the same with the company that I work for as well. Right, we had to think very, very hard about setting up our innovation center here in Kerala as opposed to Bangalore or Hyderabad or wherever else. But having said that, I think it is possible to attract talent from those places to Kerala. I mean, we've got great infrastructure here. We just need to market Kerala more from a career perspective than we do currently, right? So that is at some level, some work has to be done in actively marketing your location as a choice for the talent that you're trying to attract. Now the other aspect, I think, slightly at a slightly broader level is the fact that honestly, most academic institutions and the work that they do in readying people for industry is very sad. I mean, it really is non-existent if you ask me. So the question, and this has been an age-old question, is how do you get academia and academic institutions to kind of align with the needs of industry? So that becomes a key focal point. And I think what I've seen, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, is that several universities are becoming more open to partnering with academia and actually going out and asking, hey, what is it that you need? Or what can we do that will make us more relevant to your needs? Because this is not a choice for them anymore, right? If you see that nearly 40% of Kerala's engineering seats are going vacant today, means that, it's a fire sale. right?
Yeah.
They've got to go out and sell
The
that capability.
The joke is trespassers will be admitted. That is that is the
Exactly,
sign.
exactly. So I don't think it's an option anymore, and it's heartening to see that, you know, there are actually positive moves from universities to actually come forth through industry and say, hey, you know what, how can we partner, how can we work together? So that, I think, is a positive step, because the moment academia understands what industry or what makes research relevant from the context of industry, you will find that a lot of the basic research that industry is unwilling to commit to because of, like I said, the larger India problems, right, can be solved at that level, right? And therefore, the general engagement can be more fruitful. So that is one key aspect that I find, you know, is light at the end of the tunnel. That's not a train.
Yeah, Ajit, you want to go?
Yep. So I said Kerala doesn't have a famine as far as the commons is concerned. I didn't say that. It is Nobel laureates like Amartya Sen, Piketty, who've referred to the Kerala model as truly outstanding. Raghuram Rajan, in an interview earlier this week, was again referring to our model and saying that we are streets ahead, we are a generation ahead of the rest of India, perhaps much of the world.
But not generating money, right? It is just a social model using money coming from outside.
That's the point I'm making, and I think that's a reference to VCs like you, saying that how the hell are you going to start funding
below the belt.
startups in the, who are working in the commons. And let me just drop a few numbers. And I'll talk about Kudumashri, and then I'll talk about us, because I think we are, and you could probably fund us too. But if you look at Kudumashri, close to 600,000, 700,000 members, with a lend of over 9,000 crores, with a thrift saving of around 7,500 crores. Now, these are enormous numbers whose, it's an organization that is it's a society. It's working on what I call a distinction between prosperity and wealth. I think they're focusing on prosperity. But when they're focusing on prosperity, they're also creating an enormous amount of wealth. I'd like to sort of take you back to the 2021 budget speech, which I think of Dr. Thomas Isaac, which I think was really a watershed budget speech, because it brought the first time three distinct areas of Kerala together. One is obviously the local self-governance, the women empowerment, that part of it. The enormous human resource capital that we have created. And the third aspect is science. The convergence of these three, he saw, was the future of Kerala. And in the genesis of KDISC, which was meant to be the instrument of taking that forward. I would like to refer to my own case now of mByom, which actually was started with challenging the first tenet of economics, which is scarcity, and saying there's a world of abundance, of prosperity, a bit like Mahabali's Kerala, is something that I've set up a for-profit enterprise for. Again, some numbers, and in terms of CSR that we've actually mobilized for the Tamil Nadu schools, in less than 11 months, we've raised close to 250 crores of money for these schools. In terms of my own solution, a hope, we're getting the government of Tamil Nadu to invest 100 crores into a credit guarantee program, and that is going to translate to a mind-boggling 30,000 crores as a lend to the bottom of the pyramid. What can this sort of money do to enterprise and transformation? I think where the research is required, we've talked about the products and this thing, but I think given that we have such an enormous head start in this realm of the alternative economics, are we doing enough in translating that into entrepreneurs leveraging this huge head start that we have? There was one more, and I'll stop with this, is that 2 days or 3 days ago, the World Bank released a report on indebtedness. I think the crisis that the world is, our neighbor Sri Lanka, all countries, the level of indebtedness, climate change is such an extreme that the classic model of entrepreneurship is not sustainable. I strongly believe that. And I think TiE needs to sit up and look at it and come out with an alternative model which begins to look at the commons. Thank you.
Very nice points, Ajit. And thanks for bringing up Kudumbashree. Kudumbashree is, I think, maybe Kerala, somebody in Kerala should get a Nobel Prize for it. It's such a fantastic program that they've been able to put it. Thoufeeq, over to you.
So even I saw that Rajan interview. So he talks about human capital, right? That's our asset. If you simply put it into 3 words, you just say skilling, reskilling, upskilling. That's the fundamental of how we can capitalize and gain going forward. But what are the challenges on that? So if you look at it on our sustainability vertical, when we look at 3D printing, how to make manufacturing a more sustainable place, reduce sort of carbon footprint. Most companies that even invest in 3D printing technology, they use it completely in-house. They don't keep it out to the public. It's a very closed loop. It is not accessible to anyone. So one of the things, what you asked was, what are the things that you are doing, right? So one of the things that we are doing is in the Bangalore office, where we have our 3D printing center, we've tied up with the University of Aachen to make it, lovable, or to make it capable for everybody to utilize that technology. So people can come and take courses there, learn the technology, utilize that space. Obviously, manufacturing for our own in-house requirement will be done, and for companies at large outside. But this will help, students come in, learn new technology, see where, the industry is going, and, skill themselves even better. So be readily available to a newer technology going forward.
Does your company have any outside investors, or is it all family owned?
Unfortunately, it's fully family owned.
No, it may be fortunate too, you never know, because maybe Ajit, you're talking about the VC mindset, right? By the way, I'm not a VC, but I know the VC mindset. So it's a very valid point, especially in India. The VCs tend to not to put money into companies which have a lot of R&D spend. What do you think, Vijay? Is that true? And if so, why?
I do think companies, the short-term return focus of VCs actually really comes in the way of long-term investments. I'm just speaking from the social investment point of view. I think the new SEBI stock exchange for social stock exchange is a way forward where we actually look at, not necessarily, we don't have to depend on VCs for the funding, who is actually extremely impatient. But there could be impact funds, etc., that are willing to come in through the social stock exchange with an exit option into these sectors.
Vishal, your thoughts?
So I think one of the key issues with investment, especially from a VC perspective or any kind of private equity money into R&D, is the fact that there is very little respect for intellectual property in India. There's very little safeguards for intellectual property in India. So from that perspective, is it fair to expect that somebody is going to make a long-term investment when you know that the person can be picked up by your competitor, or the person can move on and do exactly what, literally walk away with the IP and, replicate that somewhere else, right? When that sort of issues are definitely very relevant, and that's the proverbial, elephant in the room that people generally don't like to talk about, right? Then there's this, also, when you look at it from the standpoint of even companies, right? When you look at R&D, you'll be hard placed to find, especially in the pharmaceutical sector, where there is an R&D scientist who has full understanding of the entire process, right? One of the safeguards that the R&D setup has kind of built to protect itself against, or to safeguard its IP interests, is to create stratifications and what they call Chinese walls. They're actually more Indian walls now, right, around processes, ring fence, very, very standard practices, such that most people don't even know what the hell is going on, right? It's a necessary evil, possibly, but then it definitely, when you compare that to, say, Switzerland or Singapore, where the relevance of an R&D scientist and his understanding of the entire value chain around his product and development and things, and functional, what I call situational fluency around his function, is far greater. And it's very hard to find that in India, right? For good reason.
And it's just not.
Can I just have a contrarian point of view? And I think this is, you know, a direction because I work largely with governments and much of many ecosystems are built on the government where IP is actually available to all. I think when you're beginning to start looking at the alternative economic models where, you know, there is no longer your P&L and your balance sheet that actually matters, where you're actually not a private, in quotes, limited company, then there is, and if you're looking at the theme of prosperity, it's controversial, but I think IP needs to begin to mean less and less as we start moving into this new economics of a world of prosperity. And not, you know, you look at maximizing wealth, and that's what shareholders and VCs are looking for. But when you step away from scarcity and say that there's an alternative economic model of abundance, then IP ceases to be such an important issue.
Yeah. How many minutes do we have? Hello, madam? So, yeah, 12 minutes, right? Yeah, so we'll take a couple of minutes and then we'll go to the audience. But like an entrepreneur, let us say, and he's going out with his plan to the investor. So how will we justify, let us say he has like $2 million of his money, that $3 million that he's going to raise is for R&D. Thoufeeq, if you are making the pitch, or if you're advising the guy making the pitch, how will you advise him?
On an industry perspective, I would say that there is a lot of common ground in terms of tackling these sort of issues, a collaborative approach in terms of what are the challenges that specific sort of person is going to invest his money, where is he going to focus on, what are the trouble points that there is, and what can that outcome be if you put that money into it. So primarily, if you look at it on our perspective on a manufacturing side, we have only scratched the surface in terms of productivity gains when you compare it to China. So there's still a huge productivity gap when you look at manpower to utilization. So in that space, if you have $2 million to invest in...
I'm trying to get the $2 million. I'm trying to convince the VC that it's a well spent.
Oh,
Bear with me for 3 years. I will use this money and give you a good return. There are startups here, I think, in the medical field. I met a diagnostics company. There's another company making a product for dry mouth. And they all need to run clinical trials. They need money. But they're finding it very difficult to convince the VC community in India. Yeah. They'll get money if they were in the Bay Area or somewhere else. But here, they're finding it very difficult. Any advice?
On that basis, I think you should ask the panelists because I won't be the right person to...
You've always had money. You're born with a silver spoon.
That's not true. It has its own challenge.
So, Ajit, what do you suggest?
Yeah, I'm going to continue to speak on commons, but I'm going to take this curious case of Kerala, land of coconut trees. In my mind, I think Koyer, and because I was thrown out of Kerala with Koyer, and we created Tan Koyer in Tamil Nadu, which is doing extremely well, which is a facilitation of the Koyer sector. Now, I talk about a specific product, which is the binderless board. I have some colleagues, Raju Govindan.
What is that?
The binderless board, made out of Koyer pith. It's the greenest wood in the world. I mean, you're harvesting your coconut every 45 days, converting it into a wood, 100% biodegradable, because you're using the lignin in the board to make it. The first document was made by Wageningen, and I discovered this document when I started working in Koyer.
What's the point?
Yeah, the point is that when you're looking at these products, which desperately needs investments, it is hard to come by, because if we crack this binderless board, thousands of entrepreneurs could actually benefit from this program.
So you're basically saying that how do you put the story in?
No, it's not. It's how do you get investments into the commons? And I'm just saying that how do you get VCs? Government is very slow to move to it. But how do you get if this can make such a dramatic multiplier effect, exponential impact for large number of entrepreneurs to set up a business, why aren't we investing into these areas?
Okay, I think now we'll get to the audience, maybe make it more lively. If you have any questions for the panelists, you can either put it as a general question which anybody can answer, or if you want to ask somebody very specifically on anything, you're welcome. Raise your hand, and I hope a mic will walk over to you. Yeah, many hands. Can they get a mic?
We have the mics placed right in the center. If you could just, yes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, there are mics placed in the center. You can just walk up. Just 1 or 2 lines about yourself and the question that you want to ask.
Yeah, I'm Abhilash. I'm basically doing my PhD in computer science. So my question is basically, that is where I thought academia should be acting, because you were talking about fundamental kind of changes or confined technology things that we need to create for the entire ecosystem to benefit. That's where we thought academia plays the real role. Okay. But where is it lacking that kind of, and why is it not going to academia? So this is 1, 2 point, because if you talk about DST funds, it doesn't come on time. And even the reviews don't come on time. So what is that really can make it work? Because it's an academia.
I think everybody is sort of scared to get into the academia, but I think there's a fundamental problem that he's talking about. Right? What can the academia do, or how can we improve the academia?
Yeah, I'll probably go back to what I started off with, that 4 matrix framework. Clearly, you know, the issue with R&D and all the centers of excellence, IITs or otherwise, is that translationary research, being accountable for the outcomes, is actually not forthcoming in many academic institutes. I do believe that, you know, academic institutes, from looking at just the R&D quadrant, need to look at the other 3 quadrants to actually create that impact that they're looking at. And I'm sure then you will start finding the investments coming in.
Anything to add?
So just to add to that, see, one of the fundamental dogmas in this entire problem, in this entire landscape, is that academia doesn't have access to the voice of the customer. And if you look at any kind of value-based research or any product development of any value or consequence, it is inherent on understanding what is the end user having to say, right? So the question is, the only interface between the customer or the end user and academia is industry. So those kind of partnerships are what will ultimately allow the translation of research and make the research more relevant to industry, and the industry then makes products that's more relevant to customer need. So it's that central dogma that, you know, somebody needs to address.
There's a break in
the whole system. Yeah.
Thoufeeq?
So in that sense, I think most of the students coming out of NIT or some of the other major colleges, they look at that final year project as a dissertation or a thesis to complete, and how do you take it forward? So accountability, right? So how do you closely integrate industry and, you know, academia together?
Real life problems.
To really solve problems.
But maybe it's also the lack of quality of the institution per se?
I think no. I think private enterprises also have a better role to play. I think that integration is also primarily important. So in this sense, I think there is still a lot of work to be done on both sides to integrate all of that together.
Okay. Anybody else? There's some other hands that had gone up. Can walk to the mic, please. Keep the question brief, to the point.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. John Paul. I'm founder of a startup.
Dr.
John Paul, founder of a startup in diagnostic space.
Oh, fantastic.
So to quote Mr. Santhosh yourself, so the 4 types of entrepreneurs: the natural one, the natural entrepreneur, the family entrepreneur, and the corporate entrepreneur. The 4th type, the reluctant entrepreneur. So those comes from the academia and the technocrats, and those get a lot of funding from in the West. So wouldn't that be the answer to the question whether R&D should be supported more to solve this problem among the academia and the technocrats in the universities itself?
So you are saying we should encourage more entrepreneurs to come out of universities?
Yes.
PhD, those who are very well qualified.
Yeah, not only the universities, the colleges, the medical colleges, the IITs, those sort, yeah.
Okay. By the way, he was quoting from my book, but I didn't pay for the question.
No, 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 you didn't.
Okay. So I don't know him also. But yeah, but maybe would you guys want to add to that?
So I think one of the interesting aspects of this, which is important to understand, is that a good functional expert doesn't necessarily make a good startup or a good entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship has certain personal qualities, and I believe that a lot of it is personality driven, right? You need it's typically what was described by a bunch of researchers called Myers-Briggs, who brought in the Myers-Briggs type indicators, right, later on, as a venturesome doer, somebody who's willing to take risks. And inherent in the behavior of researchers is to de-risk, right? So it's sometimes that's the dichotomy. So the point, I think, of relevance here is for entrepreneurs to understand their shortcomings, right? And try to work with somebody who has, who can complement their strengths. So that's the key aspect of, I don't think entrepreneurship is about an individual.
So building the
team, right? That's the core. That's the core way to solve the problem, I believe.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, those 4 frameworks. And the fact is that these are very, very distinct competencies. Someone who's great in R&D is not the best person to be the outside-in innovative person. The person who can translate it into SOPs and standards, again, is not the, or even the problem solver is normally not the R&D guy. So you are actually talking about a group of people representing different competencies coming together to make a transformation.
Next question. I think we have time for one more question. Or no? 2 minutes is there. Anybody else? No? Okay, guys, maybe there's 1 minute each for any last comments. Vishal, why don't you start off?
So just the light at the end of the tunnel from the standpoint of biotechnology at least is, and Sam and I are closely involved in this, is the CVJ Center for Synthetic Biology and Biomanufacturing, which we are setting up as a independent research center of excellence, and we are hoping to build the talent pool required that will fund a biotechnology hub, right, from a human capital perspective for the future in Kerala. So that's something that we are going to work closely together along with QSAT. So from the standpoint of how do we take relevant action, this is one of the private public partnerships that can seed a lot of similar ventures in the future.
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a scratch record. Invest in the commons. Kerala has a distinct advantage in the commons over the rest of it. It is not seeing enough research, enough investment coming into entrepreneurship that can ride on the shoulders of the commons.
Thoufeeq.
So lastly, just if people are interested in additives, in manufacturing, in 3D printing, please come have a look at the Additive Manufacturing Center in Bangalore, which is near the airport. I think there is a lot of courses that's going to be available later on, probably next year. So that will help in terms of skilling if you want to get to that side or looking.
So that is something which your company is set up?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
So humble bragging, but I'm sorry.
No, that is a good information.
People are interested in that.
Kripa explain how to brag, right? So yeah, I'd like to just add a finishing point what to Ajit was saying. Yeah, government should do, and I think, but government, especially a government of Kerala, has very small funds. So they are trying. He talked about KDISC. KDISC is an institution that has been set up to promote these type of innovations and all that. In fact, I am an advisor to KDISC. And one of the projects that, a project idea that I gave, they're trying to bring into practice. That is to set up a Kerala Genome Data Center. We call it KGDC. So they sanctioned 500 crores for setting up Kerala Genome Data Center. Because as you know, Kerala is one of the top biodiverse places in the world. So that biodiversity is the result of genomics. So the genomic data from Kerala is very valuable. So the government understands that and as wants to start the project. So these are the projects which data will be available to everybody, the commons. Yeah. And that can be the basis by which entrepreneurs and others can leverage that. Yeah. But at the same time, the challenge that happens is that we have so little funds.
Yeah, so I think that's really the moot point. How do you get private investment to invest into the commons and see that it is actually worthwhile to invest in?
I think you should live in Kerala for a little while to know the scandals that we have. If you get private money into something, then many of us might be sitting in jail. Okay, guys, thank you very much, and thank the panelists for a wonderful session.